Pizza time.
Expensive.
I'm not paying for those.
Pizza time.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Spider-Man 2 for the PS5. And the reason I am is because a lot of people, friends and chat included, have been asking me whether or not it's worth buying the game or playing the game in general. I think the main reason for that is because of the price. There's a lot of work that goes into games nowadays, but I think the deluxe edition for this game is $79.99, I think. And the normal edition, I think, is $69.99, which is a lot of money to spend on a game. And so I thought, instead of going through person by person and saying what I liked about the game and what I didn't like about the game and whether or not I think it's worth buying it overall, I thought I'd just make a video on it. So we're going to go through some of the strengths, some of the stuff that I think they could have done better, and how to fix those things, in my opinion. And a little bit of a trivia thing at the end, because I don't really know what I'm doing, and this is the first review that I've done, so I'm just kind of throwing shit at the wall and hoping that some of it sticks. Let's get the strengths out of the way, because you're not here for that, let's be honest. You're here to find a reason not to buy the game. And what I will start with is the traversal. And they really did not need to improve on it anymore. It felt incredible the last time. Again, if you've played it before, I really do not need to tell you how good it feels to swing around New York as Spider-Man. And not only have they kept that for this game, but they've also improved on it with the gliding system, which I was a little bit hesitant on. I mean, obviously these games borrow heavily from the Arkham series, and in the Arkham series, gliding is a big mechanic. And I felt like the traversal of Spider-Man was the thing that kind of set it apart from those games. And so when I heard that they were adding gliding into the game, I was skeptical that it was just going to make it feel like a more colorful Batman game. But it really doesn't. It really adds to the traversal system. It keeps up with the speed of the swinging, which is nice. And it really feels like the city is built for it, even though it is still the same city as before. And the story overall, I will say, is an improvement on the first one, for sure. My main problem with the first game, other than a problem that we'll touch on that has kind of carried over to Spider-Man 2 later on, was that I felt like the Sable kind of storyline in the first one was a little bit forced. I felt like they started with basic henchmen, and then they realized that they needed to have like some kind of elite soldiers to make the game more challenging later on down the line, and so they just like pushed for the Sable soldiers in the first one. Whereas this time, that militia's kind of been swapped with Kraven's Hunters, which makes more sense within the game's story, which I like a lot. So I think that was one of the big problems that I had with the first one that they've kind of solved with this iteration of the game. Another worry that I had as well was the inclusion of Miles as well as Peter in this game. Like, I was worried that they, instead of making a good story for one character, would try and spread it equally across both, and then they would miss the mark on both. But I will say that the arc for both characters in this game, I feel like, is very fleshed out. I don't feel like I'm left wanting more with either of the storylines. And I think that worry kind of carried over to the combat system as well. I was a little worried that with having two separate characters that you can play as at any time, and their combat being completely different, that they wouldn't have a really fleshed out system for both. But I feel like they do. I think it helped having a separate game for Miles in between the first one and the second one, where they could really kind of flesh out Miles's power set. And speaking of combat, they also added a parry system to this game, which actually plays really well. I will say, this one, more than the last one, I did kind of feel a little bit overwhelmed with some of the combat in the game. There's a lot going on. Like, some of the attacks you can only parry, some of the attacks you can only dodge, some of the attacks you can only jump. Which is a system that's been in many games, but I feel like with a very high-speed combat game like the Arkham games and like this game, it sometimes gets a little bit overwhelming. Especially with Kraven's Hunters, I feel. Some of the ranged hunters have very spam-like abilities, which can be more annoying than challenging sometimes. However, with all of those accolades, there are still issues with the game. Some that have kind of carried over from the first one, others that are kind of fresh and new, I feel. And again, look, I know there's going to be people watching this video that are going to say that this is very nitpicky, and it is, because it's a review. I would say overall, I enjoyed the game a lot. I would recommend it to everybody, but there are problems with the game. And my main one is that a lot of the side missions feel like a chore list to me in this game. And what I mean by that is New York in this game is split up into districts. And each district will have X amount of side missions in it. And these can range from collectibles to very fleshed out side missions to kind of puzzle-based side missions. The problem is that a lot of these side missions are the same puzzle or kind of like the same layout, copy and pasted 15 times across the city that you have to do, that then rewards you with one unique mission at the end. And to me, that made the game feel like more of a chore list than anything else. When I unlocked a new set of side missions, I very rarely felt like excitement to go and do them. I just felt like, oh god, there's 20 more of these puzzles that I have to do across the city. I might as well just go and do them now. So, for example, there are Prowler missions. So, pretty early on in the game, Miles will get a call from his uncle, and his uncle will tell him that there are Prowler caches all around the city, and that he has to go and find them and get the parts back. And there are about 10 to 15, I would say, approximately, of these all around the city. And all of them are just go to this location, pull a panel, do a puzzle, go and get the parts, and then that's it. They take about a minute to complete, if that. Another example is there are these kind of like missing person side missions, which don't actually involve any detective work. It just involves you following a bird in glider mode. Again, 10 to 15 times just in different parts of the city, which again rewards you with a unique mission at the end. And there are a lot of these. I could go on and on and on, but a lot of the side missions are just that. You do this one thing, now you gotta do it 10 times, and then you get rewarded with an actual mission at the end. Now, some of them, the EMF experiments, for example, all of those are unique, and I will give it to them that it kind of makes sense for them to be in that format. Some of them are like minigame puzzles that you've kind of done before, and it makes sense for that. But for the other 80% of the side missions, I don't want to keep doing the same puzzle over and over again just to fill time for the game. And a lot of you might be saying, what's the solution to that? Like, you're complaining about it, but what would you do to improve it? And to that, I would say, look at the Arkham games. The Arkham games don't feel like a chore list because the side missions are, instead of 15 of the same puzzle over and over again, they are like 3 to 4 side missions that are like semi-unique, and they culminate into this one big unique mission at the end. So, for example, we're talking about the Prowler missions. The whole thing about the Prowler missions is that you're trying to get the Prowler tech off of the streets because the criminals of New York are trying to get to them. So instead of having the same puzzle 10 to 15 times, maybe cut it down to 3 or 4 and have different fights with different gangs over those parts. So let's say one of them, you fight off Craven's Hunters, which are already coded into the game. You could just copy and paste them, pop them in. Next one, you go to a different location and you fight off Martin Lee's gang, and then you can carry over, copy and paste them from the first game, so there's not a lot of coding to do there. And then the next one, you can have, I don't know, Oscorp trying to get it, and then you can copy and paste the Oscorp soldiers, because they're also in this game. And then maybe the fourth and final mission is another gang, but then you fight the gang leader, and then you can have like a little mini-boss at the end. And then I feel like that would kind of mix it up enough and give it more of a unique feel rather than just, oh, there's like 10 of these puzzles that I have to go and do now that are all kind of identical. And there's a lot of things that can be fixed like that. And a great example of that is there's a side mission called The Flame in this game, which is exactly that. Instead of having like 10 or 15 puzzles to go and do, there's 3 side missions that all take part in different buildings with like mini bosses and stuff that you can do, and that's sick. And I would say if you clipped all of those missions together, those 3 missions, that lasts longer than the 15 or so puzzles that I've done for the Prowler missions. And I know that it takes longer to code, and I know that it's very easy for me to sit here, having never made a game in my life, and say, why didn't you make more of the game, you lazy son of a bitch? Why do you put a bunch of puzzles in here? Why do you put Rhino in the game, huh? I get it. But I'm just saying, for me, it felt like a lot of the stuff was just kind of filler, and I didn't really like that. I felt like most of the side missions were just a checklist for me to check off. My second, like, nitpicky thing that I don't like about a game that I actually love is a great way to word it, is the suits. Look, I love that they put more effort into giving us more suits. However, they got rid of what made the suits good in the first place, which was the powers attached to them. In the first game, for context, every time you unlock the suit, it would come with a power. So you click in the thumbsticks and it would give you like a passive, or it would give you like a big slam, or something like that. And they got rid of that in this game, and they replaced it with a power for both characters, I guess. And to counteract that, they just added more suits. I think there's like 3 times as many suits in this one as there is in the first one. Obviously, there's double the amount of characters in there, but they're all cosmetic. And again, I know you could, like, narrow it down to guy who's never made a game in his life just wanting more out of their game, and I'm just sat here literally in my underwear being like, why don't you add more fucking abilities to the suits, you son of a bitch? Why don't you just make them look cool, huh? Where's my big slam? But, again, the way I would fix it is just get rid of most of them. If you're putting, like, 80 suits in the game, just, like, cut that in half. Give each player 20. Give Miles 20, give Peter 20, or not even that. Give him like 15 each, and then like 5 that are just cosmetic. But then just add like little abilities to the game, because what this resulted in was me basically just finding a suit and being like, yeah, that one looks cool, and then that was the only one that I bought the entire game. And occasionally there will be another one that I'd be like, yeah, that one looks kind of cool, and I'll buy that one, I guess, and try that one on. But for the majority, I didn't even bother experimenting with any of the, like, different suits or different styles or whatever. I just found one that I liked and I stuck with it. The only reason that I bought them all was to get the trophy at the end, and that was it. And again, if your argument is, well, that would have probably taken a long time to code, just port some over from the other one. I don't think anybody would have cared. I mean, I know there were a lot of, like, people saying that this was just a glorified DLC, which is the dumbest take I've ever heard in my life. Just because it's in New York. I don't know what those people realistically wanted from the game. I mean, I think it would have been more ridiculed if the developers were like, well, guess what? He's on vacation in Vancouver now, and we're in Vancouver for the day. I did also see a lot of people complaining about the length of this game, and I think it's still really hard today to kind of, like, gauge whether or not it's worth it for length-wise, because $70 is a lot for any experience whatsoever. I feel like a lot of people could get away with charging $70 for, like, 8 to 10 hours of gameplay. For me, personally, to platinum the game and to, like, 100% the game, it took me about 20 to 30 hours, I would say. And I mean, if you're, like, using the fast travel system and stuff like that, then obviously that's going to be quicker. I prefer to just swing around, because I don't really see the point of buying a Spider-Man game and then fast traveling everywhere, because it kind of defeats the purpose. But I felt like it was a decent size. I felt like it was a decent length for the money that I spent on it. But I will say, overall, those are really the only 2 things that I have to say that are wrong about the game. And they're both very nitpicky things, I will be honest. I really had to rack my brain to try and find things wrong with the game, or that didn't feel quite right with me about the game. And now we get to the segment that I'm sure you've all been waiting for, which is called, what's up with those things? That doesn't make any sense, if you really think about it. The classic segment everybody loves. I will give, like, a little bit of a spoiler warning for this segment, because there are some things throughout the game that I'm going to be talking about that is kind of late game, so you have been warned in advance. Number 1 is, canonically, right, Spider-Man can lift 10 tons. You could be knocking all these motherfuckers out with 1 punch if you wanted to. Why is it taking, like, 8 punches to knock them out, realistically? Stop pulling your punches back so much and just hit them slightly harder, and I can just knock all of these guys out in 1 punch. Makes no sense. Why am I hitting them, like, 10 times? Why am I giving them the time of day? Just knock them out. Number 2 is when I get my anti-venom suit, and I'm using the Sonic gadgets. Why isn't it affecting my suit? I'm also a symbiote. If I shoot the thing and it's, like, affecting all of the symbiotes, and I'm a symbiote and I'm fine, why isn't it affecting me? Do I just get special privileges? Is the anti-venom suit not a symbiote? How does that work? Also, again, canonically, in the comics, Venom is weak to fire, but in this one he's, like, completely immune to it, I guess. It's, like, historically, fire and Sonic are the things that hurt the most. And then, like, halfway through the game, he's like, I guess it's fireproof, smile.
You okay with all this fire? Yeah, actually. Not even breaking a sweat.
And the last one is, in Across the Spider-Verse, the movie, again, kind of spoilers for this, but not really. There's a cameo in that movie with Insomniac Spider-Man. And yet, there's a cameo in this game where Insomniac Spider-Man interacts with Across the Spider-Verse, kind of the movie, and he doesn't know what's happening, so what's the deal there? Which one comes first? Is Across the Spider-Verse technically after what's happening in the Insomniac universe? Or is the one that we see in the movie not actually the guy? Or is he just pretending not to know because people are listening in? What's happening here? But of course, all of the answers to these questions are it's a fucking video game and who cares?
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
But I thought I'd put those things in there because these are the thoughts that I've had as I'm playing through the game. But yeah, overall, very fun. It is definitely worth the buy. If you enjoyed the first one, you'll love this one. And if you don't want to spend that much money on it, I'm sure it will come down in price nearer Christmas time for people that want to buy it for their kids for Christmas. You don't really have to wait that long. The unfortunate circumstance of the internet is that you will probably get spoiled with YouTube thumbnails and stuff between now and then, but that shouldn't lessen the experience for you. It is a good game. I think it's well worth the money, personally. And I guess, with this being a review, I need to give it a ranking, so, 8, I guess? Out of... Nah, I give it like an 8 out of 10, I guess. Maybe an 8.5. I know this is kind of a different video to do. I think I might do more of these, because I really enjoyed recording this and, like, making the script in, like, heavy quotation marks, like, triple quotation marks. Because I like speaking about games. But if you have enjoyed, please consider leaving a like on this video and subscribing. It really helps me out a lot. Comment down below what you particularly liked about the game and didn't like, maybe. Because I really like reading those and seeing what other people's thoughts and feelings were on either what I've said, or me as a person, or my personality, or my voice. Or the game, I guess.